Like, did you have to pinch yourself when you got in the jet and like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this? Or was it kind of just like, right, it's work today?
Yeah.
How did that work?
No, it was work, you know, and it's
Really?
it's not arrogant to say that, but we were walking amongst legends, like, and then you mark yourself across that. You know, there's always someone better. I mean, I keep saying Roy Mack because I know you know him and he's been on, but you know, you're walking amongst these sort of people. You know what I mean? And if I were like, you know, if I'd have just arrived at that position, I probably would be, you know, but it's micro steps to get to that position. Course, and you're marking yourself amongst your peers, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it was cool. But, you know, you're on a squadron and it's just like, you know, everyone's the same as you. Bit better, bit worse, you know, but you're just the same as a regular sort of guy, you know? Yeah,
because I'm coming from like an Avgeek's point where you get up in the morning, put your flight suit on, this is normal, I'm just going to go and fly a multi-million-pound jet.
Some things really annoyed me, just ever so slightly, and, you know, we're going sort of backwards and forwards through time a little bit, but I'd just got back from Afghanistan on the GR4 as the crash over the Mori Bowl happened. Remember those 2-3 guys lost their lives? Incredibly, you know, a guy called Fish survived. You know, really tragic, and that brings it back to you about, you know, you say about having your breakfast in the morning, you know what I mean? And those guys would have had the breakfast in the morning, you know, kissed their wives, girlfriends, you know, goodbye, or had an argument or whatever, you know what I mean? Paid their, you know, MOT bill, whatever, like normal business, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, should have turned left and you turned right or whatever, you know, that's it. And what really annoyed me about that is God, this sounds like the Air Force is just one big party, you know, like it wasn't, you know, but these are the stories that come out. But we went to the bar, you know, and to let steam off, you know, it was one of those nights, you know, and the Air Force does a whole world, or when I was in, you know, about trim training. I forget what that is, trauma, you know, response. It's just to unwind, you know, for your mental health. So you could put that down to, you know, good old-fashioned trim kind of stuff, you know, of just unwinding. And for me, it was realization. You know, we also lost Kenny and Nige. You know, they were on the other squadron when I was on the F3, and we did something very similar there. You know, it was handled a lot better with Kenny and Nige. But you know, the Mori Bowl crash, there was a meeting, and this absolutely horrible, like, PSF, you know, admin kind of person was there going, you know, we should charge all the air crew for, you know, having a party and, you know, damaging some chairs or something, you know what I mean? And it was like, right, you know, did this for a reason, you know, did this so I can get in the jet, you know, next Monday when we're flying again, and, you know, shake it off and go, hey, could be me, you know, facing exactly the same odds as those guys, you know. You need a bit of realization, and then to get zero understanding and compassion for that, I was just like, you know, how are these people even part of the Air Force, you know? But they've got their own little world of, I broke a chair, you know, it should be charged for vandalism, you know, like, here's my checkbook, you know, you know what I mean? That was a bit of a rant, I'm sorry, but you know, these you know, waking up every morning and popping off to work and stuff, yeah, it just becomes a bit normal, but yeah, sometimes you get grounded very quickly.
Did you ever take the F3 to an air show, not displaying it, but on static? And
no, I need to send you another photo.
There we go.
So, I think I told you last time, I was a pits display pilot. I had my own little pits display, and the very nice guys down at RIAT invited me down for a display down there, and I was extremely chuffed with that. And I don't know if anyone remembers me. You know, you get the
I've seen the video.
You get the fan photos kind of thing. You know, this is RIAT, and I think there was like one of me of like 3,000 pictures taken, because there were some amazing events, you know, and acts like ours on between the F-22 and the Red Arrows, and literally I was the toilet break. I saw everyone just queue up to the Portaloos while I did a few loop-the-loops, you know. But anyway, a guy called Gino took the F3, and you know, I'd made a bit of money from you know, from the little gig, you know, just enough to sort of cover my costs. But you know, I took my flying suit, and what I loved about all the air shows were the air cadets. The air cadets just absolutely pulled it out, you know, and without them, none of these things, and they'd be on the line, like patrolling the crowd line, day in, day out, you know, baking hot sun, and almost forgotten, you know, like obviously they're not forgotten, but you know, you're just like, oh my God. So it got to the end of the day, on the last day, and the Red Arrows were displaying, you know, and I was, well, me and Gino and a guy called Pat, we were like legging people up. I don't know if, sorry, am I in the way? Can you see the fuel tank?
Yep.
We were like legging these air cadets up on the fuel tank to climb up on the wing, and we had them all across the spine at the back, and then I went to the ice cream van, you know, and was like passing up ice creams just to like give all the air cadets like ice cream. So like and just as it was finishing, like a few of them had gone, like a photo was, you know, this mobile kind of boom thing took a photo, but, and I hope, you know, those air cadets kind of remember that, but you know, you've got to do stuff like that.
It's even when I remember, like when I was going to air shows, I think it was a German F4, and they were showing you around the cockpit, and the pilot was there, and I was like, can you sign this photo? And it stuck with me. Because they're kind of like, for us Avgeeks, they're kind of like celebrities, you know what I mean? Like, I'll remember that forever now. And,
well, the F3, you know, it was, you know, a little bit run down towards the end. Air show wise, I went to quite a few air shows actually on the Little Hawk. You know, I don't know if your viewers remember the last video, I was on 100 Squadron for a few years, and that was really easy because it needed minimal support. You know, it was tasked through one group, so instead of 22 group, which normal Hawks are, the tasking would come to, let's say, one group that, you know, some air show like the Hungary air show would need an asset, and they'd go, well, it's a Typhoon, Lightning or a Hawk, it's on our books, and you know, Hawk just pop off, and literally we'd go, no engineering support, you know, and have the weekend and then fly back, and it was like no business, you know. And the German Typhoons would rock up next to us with like, you know, 30 engineers and like loads of spares just in case they broke, and we're just like in a little Hawk scooting it up and then going home, you know. It was great.
It's brilliant stuff.
Yeah, so from the F3, you know, there were limited slots to go to the Typhoon, and my wife came from Lossie, so I've sort of volunteered myself to go to the GR4 after that, which was great because, you know, doing so much QRA and not doing too much, I didn't want to, you know, particularly go to the Typhoon, and obviously it's done a lot and it's been great. But, you know, the fear of just doing more QRA and not participating in current events that were happening at the time, you know, where all my friends had been involved, let's say, you know, Iraq and Afghanistan, places like that, you know, that was sort of an appeal as well. So I went to the GR and spent very little, just 2 years on there. But by the time I did my OCU, and then very quickly I went out to Afghanistan, and then just a normal enrollment, like a bit of time off, then I went to Afghanistan again, and that's when the squadron disbanded. So 617 was my squadron, it disbanded and just stood up again as a Lightning squadron. So couple more of my stories from that really, because, you know, it's training and UK training, and you know, there's not much really to tell you on that side. So my time at Afghanistan, when I went out in 2011, it was 6 months after Osama bin Laden had been shot in Pakistan, and we're going out, and you know, you put your hand up going, why, you know, kind of thing. And you know, why I think it was money. You know, Dick Cheney set up a company called KBR, and it was $1,000 a day to host. It was a civilian company. You know, we were billeted by this company. You know, all the dining facilities. We had a gym. Bastion was a bit light on the ground if you were based in Bastion, but us in Kandahar we had like the boardwalk, which was like 100-meter square, and all around it were shops and coffee shops and, you know, ice cream parlours. There was a TFI Friday, or is it TGI Friday? You know, rug shops, barbers, all this sort of stuff. And you know, I mean, we were well looked after, but you think the Tornado contingents were just on, you know, living to give the, you know, Dick Cheney's company, we were giving them $200,000 a day just to live there, you know what I mean? And it's like, and we were there for another, what, 12, 13 years after Osama bin Laden had been shot, you know, and yeah, you just think about what were we doing there, you know, and you know, obviously we did whatever we did. We're Christian people, you know, we've got the Sixth Commandment, and you know, I think about whether it was valid, you know, most days, if you know what I mean, and see what's going on in the world, and we're all for going, you know, going wherever we're going with the Air Force, and I'm just like, you know, it'll be yesterday's news, you know, the moment the media stops talking about it, you know, it will just be, you know, exactly like another Afghanistan, you know, and what was it all about? But actual flying in Afghanistan was very different. The airfield's at 3,400 feet, I think, so the air's very different. The GR, famous for its power, was perfectly suited, and you know, and it was just a dusty little place to take off, you know, with the heat shimmer. Yeah. So it was a privilege to be a pilot out there. And see it all. You know, the soldiers on the ground would have their kalats, and kalat is the word we use for, you know, village or compound. You know, they'd have their set kalats and fields to go through that we think about, you know, the Ross Kemp kind of TV shows. But as a British pilot out there, I flew up against every border, you know, the Iranian border to the north, or the, you know, the stands to the top, the, you know, Kyrgyzstan, all the way to the, you know, I didn't do China, which is up the panhandle, like if you can picture Afghanistan, but then Pakistan border, you know, it was just a completely different set of topographies, you know, everywhere you go. And I don't know, now we've got Vietnam certainly on the, you know, the trail for backpackers kind of thing, you know, it's a good place to go. And, you know, I hope in, you know, 20 years time, Afghanistan becomes like a good place to go. You know, the gorges to the north, you know, there was a tanker tow line up by Mazar Sharif, you know, and you just look down and you just see this river gorge that's like carved 1,000 foot sort of deep, just straight down in the rock, and you just see this rushing river. You're like, you know, whitewater rafting there. You know, you could go hundreds of miles just in that, you know, place, and you know, the beauty of it was just incredible. But absolutely wild. You know, and again, we talked about the pullout. You know, there was a definite fighting season. All the you know, the valleys would close, you know, during the winter because it is that place, and there'd be Route 1, which was a circular highway that goes round. And you know how the American government pulled out a couple of months before. It would have all closed down anyway because of the winter, and then the Taliban took over the place, and then it closed down. And now the Taliban are set in each area. You know, so well, if you just waited a couple of months, you know, I'm no strategist, but it would have been the other way around. You know, the regular forces would have set up and just gone, right, now we're by ourselves, and we'll have 6 months to just get ourselves ready for anything that might happen in the spring. But, you know, I was very disappointed at the end, if you know what I mean. One of the flights in Afghanistan, you know, without going too much sort of detail, but we'd do a lot of Overwatch kind of stuff of moving patrols. So one of them, I was just south of Bastion airfield, like by 20 odd miles, monitoring up this Danish like tank guys. They had like, I don't know, tank things, you know, armored personnel carrier things, and they were just flying, you know. And then monitoring them, and then we got a call because we'd listen to guard frequency, and they'd say defy 6-1 or whatever our call sign was, flash over to Overlord. So we'd go to Overlord and they'd say, right, check in, go to this area, and it was all broken down, contact, you know, and it was a British JTAC, so a Widow call sign on this frequency, and chat to him. So it's like, right, okay, you know, and it's 20 miles down the road or something, and chatting to a Widow, and they're like, hey Defy, it's Private Smith's birthday today, can you give us a flyby? We're like, not much is happening, you know. We're like, okay, so what you're telling me is you've got a group of fighting age males that need dispersing, yeah? And they're like, no, it's Private Smith's birthday, requesting a flyby. And you're like, no.
I get the hint.
You tell me there's a group of fighting age males congregating and they need dispersing by a show of force. And he's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what's happening. So we go and do this show of force over Private Smith for his birthday, you know, and pop out a few flares and twinkle roll up, and you know, bomb, away we go. And we go and we're like, see it, you know, and we go back to our Danish guys, and they're like, hey Defy, sorry about my accent, they're like, hey Defy, we've just heard you on your radio. It's like, you know, Corporal Sven's birthday today. We're like, oh God, what have I started, you know?
Yeah.
And now we're just south of Bastion, and Bastion's got a north-south runway, you know, it had, and it's getting dark. So I'm like, all right, okay, go to Overlord. Right, I need this airspace to descend, you know, and they're like, okay, just give me a minute. And time goes by and it's getting darker and darker, and I'm like, okay, Overlord, what's happening, you know? They're like, yeah, but you're so close to Bastion, we're gonna have to shut Bastion airfield down. I'm like, okay. So it's like when the lie grows and grows. So now, yeah, I'm like, oh God, what do I do, you know? And I hadn't brought my NVGs, so the line of attack. So now it's getting darker and darker, so I need more airspace to get down, because it's not just a quick get down, get busy and get back up. Now I've got to like set the terrain following radar up and like, you know, cruise down. So now I've got to ask more airspace, and it's like, okay, get back. So I don't know, the Danes must have been thinking, who are these guys? It takes like, you know, loads of time to set up a show of force. But it was dark when I did it, and I flew just straight down on the terrain following radar. If you've got Bastion airfield like north-south, I was just the other side. I say the other, you know, the accommodation was to the west of the airfield, to the other side, and straight down the fence, and did this show of force, you know, and pulled up. You know, but it was dark. Anyway, got back, and Lossiemouth, you also had the RF regiment based there, and it was that, whatever squadron it was, 51 squadron or whatever, I can't remember. But you know, they're all sort of, you know, because we're friends, sort of, you know, through social media, they're sort of kicking off, going, they had no warning, they're in their towers, you know, like, and you get me going past at like 200 feet, you know, 500 knots with no lights on, it's, and they're all like lock and loading, what's going on? And absolutely, so not only did I shut Bastion down for like an hour, you know, sort of got the RF regiment on like full alert, and it was just for some dude's birthday, you know. It was like, okay, nobody needs to know about this, you know, like writing up with like the post-action report, like, yeah, two show of forces, you know, like completely dispersed everyone, you know.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's just little things that you do.
So we're going to wrap up this interview. You're currently still working at Draken. What's that like at the moment? Growing.
If anyone's interested, it's really good, getting busier and busier, and more and more the UK defence has just, you know, said they're committing more money as well, so we're only going to get busier. So it's a great little job. If anyone's still a fighter pilot looking to join, you know, it's a great little job. You know, you're still flying something that's reasonably good, but you're a civilian, you know, all the benefits of that. So for me, it just works at the moment.
Brilliant stuff. Well, Parge, thanks very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.